All right. Welcome to the Rise Up podcast. I'm your host, Jonah Mitchell. And on this show, I do my best to help you get out of your own way so you can ultimately make this process of losing weight, getting healthier, whatever you want to accomplish, a lot easier. And I hope I hope you're having a good day wherever you're listening to this, a good night, whatever it is. This is a fun episode that I get to do. I get another interview or just conversation podcast. And I'm joined with an awesome coach, a fellow member of the Transformation Project with me. And Jenn, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with me this morning.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited to be here, Jonah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's been we've been talking about this since for the past couple weeks, but life has been a pain in the ass for me as I just getting over my second sickness in the same month and a concussion. So I'm glad we were able to find time to get this all put together. And I really just like jumping right in so people can start to understand or start to hear you and your perspective. And we've been in the same circle for a long time, but I want people to know who the hell is Jenn and why is she so awesome?
Yeah. Jen is actually, I would say, my nickname. You can find me, Jennifer Rogers, inside of our Facebook group, the Transformation Secrets. But really, who I am is a really long story. In fact, when I recently had to write a biography of me, I had to shorten it up from like 2 pages down to 1 page. So I'll do my best. Um, I would say that I really started a journey of self discovery more than anything. And that kind of started when I was a teenager. I was a teenager that wanted to think that I was an adult. So at about like 13, so I don't know if you remember like people calling people who are three, like your kids who are three-nagers. But I was like this one that wanted to be an adult. And I thought that a lot about myself. I could do everything myself. And that really spawned from, kind of my upbringing, taking care of my two brothers a lot, just being outside, roaming around, spending so much of our summers. Um, and I grew up in Iowa, Illinois. And so, we have all 4 seasons, but it just, my parents' divorce was really the kicker. And so that's when I really started to rebel. I started to use drugs, alcohol, smoke cigarettes was probably actually the first real big one that happened. And that was probably even before they divorced. And I never had that instance where they made me sit down and smoke a whole pack of cigarettes or anything, but just really a lot of turmoil and not knowing who I was or where my place was. Sometimes feeling like I was a pawn in a game through divorce. And my brothers, I'm sure, felt very much the same way. And during that, I would say from about like 12 to 14, 15, just caused a shitload of trouble. And I, um, I got sued. My mom had to pay the court, pay somebody else because I sideswiped a car. Like I'm talking like not just like your average like upset. I was over the top. And at some point during that, my parents finally decided that they couldn't handle the situations I was putting them in anymore. And they actually signed their rights over to the state of Iowa. And that put me into drug treatment, inpatient. And then from there, I really opened up a whole box of like, wow, I'm really messed up. I really have a lot of issues I'm ignoring. And I also found a lot of community inside of that. So, with drug treatment and inpatient, and then moving into group homes, one of the main things we did, because we were talking about substance abuse, was get into AA and NA, which I had somewhat been exposed to AA previously because my dad is a recovering alcoholic. He's been in and out of recovery. So, but I never understood it. And that was the big change for me, is just like really opening my eyes that, first of all, I'm not out here and I'm not alone. I'm not a black sheep. And, it just really was the starting point of figuring out I am worth it. I have a lot of self worth. I'm a very smart person. I do have drive, and I don't have to use that drive to hurt myself and other people around me. And so that's where it kind of started. And I would say from there, it just kind of took off. So I never really had an actual like high school experience like most people. So that was really strange. And I didn't have like friends either. I didn't have to go through the cliche crap that most high school students have, any of that. And by the time I was 17 and a half, I was like really done with the system. I was like, I've learned everything here. Like that whole adultness really started to come back out again. And so I actually ran away from the group home and was on my own for about 6 months, just like couch surfing, I would say. And then finally one day I was just like so upset about it. I called my mom and I was like, I just want to come home. Can we just like get over this? And she put a lot of stipulations around me coming home. One of which was that I needed to get my GED. And because I wasn't willing to go back to school, I had to stay sober. I had to get a job. I had to actually be an adult. So that's kind of my first intro there into like real adultness. And I did it, and it really opened a lot of doors. The GED, I actually liked learning, which was kind of strange because I started not learning other than learning all the things that you shouldn't be learning as a teenager. So, and fast forward, like I kind of went through that. I moved out. I got my GED actually a year before my class graduated, so I was actually ahead of the game by doing all of those things. And then I moved out and moved back to the town that I was in with the group home because I did make a few friends in that time. And I wanted to be around people like me who wanted to be sober. And then I started working at a truck stop. And that really turned the tables on me. I met my ex-husband. I got pregnant, got married. And 21, I was pregnant and about ready to have my son Lucas. And that's when life kind of really took a big turn. I was like, okay, I can't stay stuck here. I can't like just be a waitress working third shift for the rest of my life, living off of tips. And within the next couple of years, I decided I was going to go to college. So I got into that, got all kinds of financial help being married without a job. My husband never was really great at keeping a job either at that time. And he took care of our son a lot. Then I realized that he was actually bringing me down at the same time too. And I really thought real hard about that, but also went back to that rebellious stage. Like those things never leave you. So I was going to college, working 2 jobs, going through a divorce. It was just a lot of ups and downs through that time.
Wow, Jen, I don't want to interrupt you. I
No,
just
you're
wanted to
fine.
interject a little bit. I this is the first time I've heard this story in its entirety. And wow, just the sheer amount of different sides of the equation. Like you've lived in the you lived multiple lives in the like some of the earliest stages of your life, and you've gone through so many aspects of challenges of situations of environmental decisions like environmental influences that it's so crazy that this happened in the matter of less, like it sounds like less than 10 years, like all these things.
Oh yeah.
And I just the fact that you've gone through all that, and then I know you're going to touch on this, but I just wanted to make sure, like you went through all of that aspect and you were able to carve out some time where you made a different decision at 21 that you don't want to be here, that you don't want to be relying on tips. Your husband at the time is dragging you down. What clicked for you in that moment? Because there was a lot surrounding you that you could have easily stayed down the path that you were on, that you could have easily went down another rabbit hole. But one moment, I don't want to say one moment, but there's a part of you that said there's something better. And I'm just curious if it was a defining moment in that area for you.
I actually think that so we're like only at 21. Like I don't think I actually grew up and had that moment till I was 30, Jonah. So there's still another
There's
9 years
still another 9 years.
of like really searching and finding myself and going through a lot of like ups and downs. So at 21, I'm just pregnant and having a kid. We didn't get actually married until 6 months later. And then, you know, we're just bouncing from place to place and, just barely making ends meet. Talk about somebody who was using the system to their full advantage of like, getting the food stamps, getting, the max amount of financial aid possible, all of those things to help me live my life. Um, but also still working really hard in the background. So even though I felt really lost, there was this little piece of me that knew that they wanted something better. And that's that person that continued to show up to college class after bartending at night, that was delivering newspapers with their kid in a wagon, pulling them around town, middle of winter, spring, small, it didn't matter. Like I've always been somebody who wants to work really hard. It doesn't matter whether it was for a positive thing or a negative thing. I worked just as hard at school and at those jobs as I did at partying. So like I didn't actually stay sober throughout this time either. That full sober didn't actually happen until 2 years ago. So I mean, it's been a long ride, and I'd say that moment of clarity that you're asking me about, it really came when I quit smoking cigarettes. I mean, and my son was 9 by that time when I was, 30, 31. I just, there was this New Year's Eve, and I was sitting in the bar. I had been sleeping with some guy, and I was sitting at the table with him and his sister and brother-in-law or something like that. And I was like, I do not like these people. I was like, what the frick am I doing with my life? This is so not where I want to be. This is not the kind of family I want. And he didn't spend a lot of time with my family as far as like my son goes, but I just did not like what I was doing or where I was going. So like talk about a light bulb moment over my head. And that's really when it shifted. I would say that was 2009, 2010, right in that time frame. And so I went to therapy. I was like, okay, I know this thing worked at one time. So found myself a therapist. I just really dug into like my hopes, my dreams. And she actually gave that back to me when I started seeing her again within the last couple of years. She's like, do you remember writing this list? And at that time, I had a dream of being a conservation person in like natural resources and being a private consultant, not working for the government, which is pretty typical, like that love of nature coming back out.
Yeah.
So I would say like that moment that you're asking about, it just slapped me in the face. And I don't know that everybody will have that clarity in that moment like that, but it was years of work to finally like realize, okay, like I'm the one basically holding myself back throughout this whole time.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I asked that question because we work with a lot of people who've gone through a lot through their lives, and a big part of coaching, being a nutrition coach, is understanding that you're not just a nutrition coach. Like you have to help people with with what they've been through, with their relationship with food and the associations that they've made, but ultimately understanding like where they're coming from and why it's happened. And the first, you're a teenager and you go through 21 and you go to the group home to try and get some help. You're working on or you ran away, right? And you move back in with your parents, you get pregnant, right? You're about to get married. There's a lot of situations that are tough. And there was a part of you that kept showing up, that kept trying to strive for a little bit more, a little bit extra, to get that college degree and work hard, even though there was a lot of reasons why you could have easily just said fuck it. You didn't have to be up, you didn't have to keep going to class. You could have said, "Well, this, I don't have the time, I don't have the focus, I don't have the energy for it." But there's a lot of there's a deeper part of you that you let keep coming out, so that eventually, when you're at that bar surrounded by those people, there's that part of you that said that you allowed to exist because because again, it could have very easily been, no, I'm not going to do any of those things that I strive for. That moment of clarity happened, and I just think I always find that super fascinating, because us as coaches, we love helping people, mainly because at one point we learned how to help ourselves. And like one of my first ever light bulb moments um was in my own personal relationships. And I shared this on the podcast before, but this is something that tell my clients all the time, that like is such a powerful lesson. Like eventually you have to draw a line in the sand for yourself and say, I'm not tolerating this anymore. This is no longer what I want. And once you have that, then now you have a clear understanding of whatever is beyond, or whatever is not the situation that like that we find ourselves in, that we declare is not what we want. As long as it's a little bit better, well, it's night and day difference, you know. And for my first like little light bulb moment, I grew up with a narcissistic mom, you know, verbally and physically abusive stepfather. My biological father's in prison for murder. Like I had a lot of reasons to be a fucked up individual. And this is I cuss a lot in the show, so if you're cussing, you can cuss. Don't worry. Um, excuse me. So in that moment, you know, I brought a lot of what I grew up with into my personal relationships with girlfriends. You know, I wasn't physically abusive. I was definitely emotionally abusive. I had narcissistic tendencies. I would gaslight and make my girlfriends feel like they were the problem. And when I was trying to, when you know, I was dating a girl in high school that I had a crush on for the vast majority of my life, and I was convinced that she was the one I was going to marry. But she had a lot of her own struggles. I don't want to say problems, because we all kind of have issues getting older. But neither of us knew how to deal with our emotional struggles or our insecurities. And it got to the point where, you know, we're off in separate colleges, and you know, we're trying to make long distance work, and like I can't make her happy, and she's trying to keep me in a little box of like I can't look at anybody, I can't talk to anybody, so I'm trying to rebel. And then she like comes up, and we see each other, and it's like this very toxic cycle for, you know, for 5 years almost. And then I'm skipping a lot of parts, but essentially we break up for about a year and a half. She leads me on after we break up. Uh, after she starts dating another guy, saying that she wants me to still be around. So I basically turned celibate for a year and a half, because I wanted to prove to her that I could be the person that she wanted me to be. The year and a half goes by. She breaks up with her boyfriend. I'm like, oh, finally, thank God. After suicidal depression, I'm actually like going to get the person that I want, that's going to help me be better. And she basically says like, you're not my boyfriend, and I don't want to be with you. And I don't want to be with you right now. I want to be single. And I was like, but that's not what you were telling me for a year and a half. The only reason I did all that for a year and a half is because the promise of what I was going to get on the other side. After that happened, after she said those words, there's something that clicked in my head. I remember I was in my house in my college town. I was just like walking around my room. I was like, okay, no longer will I let someone else determine my happiness. I am going to prioritize myself to the best of my ability. And I'm just going to, and whatever that looks like it's going to have to be better than what I've been through in this situation. And that's where 6 months later, I started dating my now wife, because I actually prioritize myself the way I needed to. Because I let myself out. I stopped that cycle. So I'm always fast. I mean, there's so many more there's so many more details, but that moment, there's usually I don't want to say usually a moment, but there's a light bulb for a lot of people when they realize I got to take care of myself too in some way. And I always love hearing everybody else's. So, well, I imagine there's definitely more. So keep going. I know I hijacked this for a second, but I just wanted to add that little detail.
No, I actually think that's a great lead in to kind of like my next like point, right? Like I graduated my first college. It was a 2-year degree, associate's degree, but it took me 3 years, right? I'm this non-traditional student in these classrooms. I'm going to school with, you know, kids 5 years younger than me. So that's a big flex too, to like try to make friends in a situation with people and like study groups and all of that. So that's really hard. But at that same time, that's when I'd gone through the divorce. I'd actually met my current partner. I'll call him my husband, but we're technically still just engaged at this point in our lives. But and we went through very similar kind of ups and downs of like how we both treated each other. Like we were never really in a relationship for like the first 5 years we were actually in a relationship. We were just like those friends with benefits because we both came from divorces and we were both very damaged and taken advantage of, financially specifically, and like emotionally as well. And so I think that feeling that you have, those ups and downs of like trying to prove to somebody that you're worth it, but then knowing that it's really just about you. There was a period of about a year where we did split up. I finally, I can't say I finally, because I don't know that I remember it that way, but like I kicked him out at one point and I was like, nope, we're done. But within that's when that light bulb, that last year where we weren't together and I was, off and on with a bunch of different people in and out of the bar situation. And that's when that light bulb moment happened. But like that turmoil of like never knowing what I wanted or who I was, and like we didn't jive, but yet we still had these feelings for each other and we were just, toying each other along. And so when that finally did happen, that light bulb, and I decided I needed to work on me, that's when things actually started to get better. I actually reached out to him and was like, hey, how are you doing? And he was actually living in Florida at that time. He went down there to work for a winter because they'll still sell motorcycles in the winter in Florida where they won't here in Iowa. And so we just started working on our relationship long distance while I was working on myself, which was probably one of the best things that could have happened for us. And then within 2 years, he asked me to marry him. And that's like kind of where we're at. And I also like went through a big change where we had a flood here that wiped out the bar I was working at, and the city wouldn't let us reopen. So that was like another big, like, hey, here's your slap in the face. You don't need to be in this place anymore. It's time for you to outgrow and find new wings and do something different. And so that's when I actually had to get a big girl job and like leave the bar. And it was really hard to not just go find another bar to work at. I had to be really committed to not falling back into that. There was also a lot of, plenty of days where I was, spent drunk as well during that time because it was an easy out to not pay attention to all the things that were happening. So he's been through a lot with me, and we've both grown as a lot of people. But I would say, yeah, that like whole growing up thing didn't happen until like 30, which I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but like that's been 13 years ago from today. And there's still been a little bit of time in between there.
Is it your birthday today?
No, like just 40. I'm 43 now. I was 30 then.
Oh, okay. I was about to say you just dropped a slight hint that it's your birthday without telling me before we recorded. But anyway,
No, no, not my birthday, but just in years,
yeah.
And then I think the big kicker for me to get into nutrition and fitness was really when I quit smoking. Like I'd always been a small person and I'd never really struggled with my weight, with my body image. Like everything I ever struggled with was up in here.
Mm-hmm.
I never worried about the rest of it. And then I quit smoking, and it was like the hardest thing I've ever had to quit. Like not doing drugs was easy. Even when I quit drinking this last 2 years ago, like that was actually a lot easier. But quitting smoking was like, I think it was worse than child labor. Like it was just really, really hard. But I committed to doing a program. I did get help. I used Chantix. It's a popular quit smoking drug back in, like 10, 12 years ago. But it's basically an antidepressant. So I had to like commit to doing a program. I had to say, I'm doing this thing. I'm going to take this drug to help me along because I know that there's going to be a lot of emotional shitstorm to come from that. Like that's the reason I never could quit before. The stress, the emotions, like I never had enough handle on all of those to be able to leave my crutch behind. And so that was like the big turning point. And after that first year of being quit, like food, I'm a food lover. I love everything about food. And that's all I did was I just started eating. And I gained like I was like pregnancy weight again. And I was like, oh my God, I hated the way I looked. I didn't know who I was. I'd like lost myself in that. Um, because I never had to worry about it before. And now it's like this thing that I'm like, oh my God, Tim's gonna hate me. He's not gonna like me anymore. That was not the case, but like in your head, you tell yourself so many stories. And so that was a big piece of that for me. And so once I gained that weight, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out how to change this because I do not want to go down this route of like just continuing that. And so the easiest thing for me to do was to start running. And that was easy because all I needed was a pair of shoes. I didn't have to invest any money. I didn't have to really, do much other than make myself go outside. And that's where I got started. And Tim's mom was actually a really big part of that too. Like she encouraged me to sign up for my races, to have set goals. And then I just towed Lucas along with me, my son, like, hey, this, you are already playing soccer, you're already playing football, like you should just come run with me. And then so I made him be my little workout buddy. It was actually really great for him too. He'd always been our lifestyle had always led us to like eating out a lot or buying the really cheap food. Hamburger Helper was like my go-to. And he actually shed a lot of weight through us learning to run and being more active in sports. It made him a better player on the field. So it's like started just to trickle from like my thing to everybody else's thing. I'm still working on my husband, but it's a slow process. And I just think that that was the really big turning point. But then I got stuck in that. Like I just wanted to keep being smaller. And I know that there's a lot of women out there that get stuck in that mindset. Like, cause I just felt like I needed to get back down to being like 105 pounds, like I was when I was, 24, 25. And now I'm like 33. And that's just not possible. So eat less, move more. It works for a while, but it doesn't sustain you. And then I end up being just as unhappy with that mentality as I did when I was overweight from where I started. So that was a big piece of that too.
Yeah, yeah, and this is I like based off of what we were talking about earlier. Like, there's a point where we make a decision. Like one, like there's a we there's a behavior that like we find ourselves coping with or stuck in that leads us to feel unhappy. Then we find a solution quote unquote for that problem, and we end up feeling better. But then it also leads to different problems because we're not fully thinking through the entire process. We, like you said, you got trapped in that keep getting smaller mentality. That's such a like this is so similar to where I was being in football, constantly being told I was too small. And you've seen me in person like vaguely, like, but hopefully in March we'll be able to see each other. But like I am not a small person by any means. Like I am usually the tallest person in every room that I walk into. But in football, you're surrounded by dudes that are in the upper percentile of height and weight and at all times, and you constantly are told that you're small, you're too small. Well, then you get that perception that you are. So like throughout my whole career, I felt like I was too small, and that's why I was never quite good enough until I decided that I need to be bigger. So I decided maybe I should try eating more, and I did. I gained 35 pounds in 3 months. It's a lot of food, so much food. Like when you're eating that much, like food loses its taste completely, and it's just chewing. It was awful. But I gained 35 pounds, and I thought my problems were solved. I thought I would finally have the career that I always wanted. Actually, it got worse. I was slower. I was more injured, more prone to injury. My sleep and my recovery was terrible. And I had thought I finally found out the problem, but now my results were worse, and I didn't understand it. I thought I did everything right. And then the problem I faced after that was now I have all this weight that I gained, and I don't need it anymore. I don't play football anymore. And that's where I found myself kind of spinning my wheels. Like now I was insecure about my size and not being able to perform, and I gained the size, and I didn't solve my problem because I played worse. Now I have a bigger problem. Now I don't recognize my body. I'm 45 pounds overweight at this point. I don't know a single thing about calories. And now I'm like, well, to feel better without football, I gotta get in the best shape of my life. I gotta get in the best shape of my life. That's how I gotta do it. I lose the 40 pounds, I get down to 8% body fat, and for my wedding, and I looked great. I can say that now, but at the moment, I didn't believe it. I did not think I looked good at all. I thought I looked terrible. I thought I had more weight to lose. I had to keep shedding fat to I thought I had to get to like a percent body fat where I would not see a lick of fat in my body. I had no idea what it was, but ultimately I wasn't like the solution to my problem of eating more wasn't helping, and the solution to getting as shredded as possible wasn't helping. It was always chasing something until we get to a point where I want you to start talking about. So when you were on that situation where you were trapped in that mindset, you just got to keep getting smaller and smaller. What did you decide to do?
Well, I think there was still a long time. I wanted to be like a CrossFit athlete, so that's when weight training came into the picture too. And I did a lot of local competitions. Never like won anything, but I always felt badass. So that was always good. But you can't be smaller, stronger, and faster all at the same time. Like you can't chase a physique goal while you're trying to chase performance. And I totally did not understand that. And I think that's what you were just like describing too, is like you had all these different things you wanted, but you wanted them
Hmm.
all in the same basket. But it
Yep.
doesn't work like that, right? You can't have all your eggs in one basket at all the same time. And I kept down that path, but I think that started to light a fire for me to really start to understand food better, and that's when I really dove into nutrition for myself. And then I started coaching other people. Like the gym asked me to apply for the position that they had open. And I was like, I'm not a coach, but inside of me, somebody else seen something. And that's why they asked me to do this, apply for it. And I did end up getting the job, and it really did like light my passion on fire. And I think that's probably one of the bigger turning points, was I was like, well, if I'm doing these things and I'm trying to tell everybody else to do these things, but it doesn't seem quite right. And so that really made me dive even further into like the knowledge bank of understanding what I was doing to myself and how to get myself out of it. So that way I could coach others better, because I was trying to coach them in the same way I had where I put myself, and that's not how that works. So a lot of trial and error in that first couple of years of coaching in person, and being more probably of like an instructor, like in-person coach, and then slowly understanding the nutrition part and adding that in. But I would say I actually didn't get myself fully out of that mindset till probably like 2019, 2020. COVID might have been the like kicker to like restore my actual metabolism, because the gym closed. So I was like, I can't work out twice a day anymore. I can't do all of those things. And that was a big opening thing too for me, is that's when I started my business, and I knew I don't want to coach people the same way that I'd been teaching myself this last, 3, 4 years. So going through some courses and like really understanding foundationally like how our bodies adapt and change, and they will just be stuck at a point if we don't continue to change what we're doing a little bit. Like I can't just only eat 1400 calories and work out twice a day. Like that wasn't going to get me anywhere else except for more tired and more irritable and actually more unhappy. And I didn't never want to see anybody else be that way. It was fine that I could do that to myself, but I wouldn't want to do that to somebody else. And that's that big point where I was like, okay, well, if you don't want to coach others in that way, you can't coach yourself in that way. And so that was probably the big turning point for me, is like, okay, get yourself out of this hole. You're going to have to gain some weight, get a little bit more uncomfortable again, lose your abs. You don't have these, you don't do the same thing. Stop doing CrossFit, started more doing the strength training aspect of things, which was a big mindset shift in itself, to move in a different way. But and it took I would say a good year and a half before I like could finally just drop that mentality of a good workout means I'm dying at the end of it, laying on the floor, gasping for my breath. And I still love that feeling though. Like to this day, I just did a little Metcon yesterday. I still love that feeling of pushing that heart rate, that there's some serious endorphins that come with that. And it's okay to do it every once in a while. But for me, I can't do it every day because I know I'll get trapped back in that same thing all over again. Maybe I'll be wiser, but I don't have high hopes yet for that. So I'll stick to my strength training.
That's funny. I mean, this is what we want to make sure when we coach any person. Like it's okay if it's taking you time. It's okay for everything that you've gone through. If there's something that you want to change, there's things that we have to change, and that might lead to a much more ideal scenario for us. And it's going to take time. It's not just like I want to make it abundantly clear, for the people listening, like once you have that like moment of like, okay, like I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna take care of myself. I'm gonna try a different solution or this opportunity that pops up. It doesn't all just fall into place where everything's sunshine and rainbows. Like the people that we compare ourselves that seem like they have it all put together, I can promise you they don't have it all put together. And it takes time. It took you a year and a half just to get comfortable with not killing yourself in the gym, and that was you still going to the gym and be like, what the hell? This is not what I'm used to. Like, why am I not crawling out of here? And that's okay. Like my relationship with food, when I got down to 8% body fat and lost 40 pounds, like I was tracking everything to a T for about a year, I think, something like that. And it took me at least like after I went through my honeymoon, I couldn't really enjoy my food without because I couldn't weigh it the entire time. It took me at least a year to get comfortable with the concept of I don't have to weigh my food meticulously, And even though I know that I was not happy with the way I spent my wedding and my honeymoon, like I know better, but it still takes time for us to get comfortable. And that's okay. It's okay that it takes time because we go through years, if not decades, of believing, of thinking certain ways. And until we actually allow ourselves to practice these things and try these new ways and give ourselves the time, I mean, it becomes an inevitability. Like you understanding yourself allowed you to start something to help people understand themselves so they don't fall down the same path that you did. Same reason why I started my own business. It's great. It's like, this is why I want people to hear about it, because we're not like these perfect, omnipotent people. Like, we're fucked up. We got a lot of things going on, and we're not perfect. We've had to make a lot of mistakes and go through a lot to get to the point where we want to help people stop making the same mistake for themselves and get to a point where they can be happy, at least to be in a better position. Because I'm in a lot better place than I used to be. And I know you're in a lot better place than you used to be, but we're still not perfect. We still can fall into those same behaviors and beliefs, like for no reason. It just like happens every now and again. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it's okay. It's like for stuff to take time.
Absolutely. And I will tell you right now, this is kind of like that same thing. Like I talked about how the workouts were like my piece, but like there was that same layer of like meticulously tracking, being like everything has to be clean, like really dialing in on all that. And it was not a happy place to be mentally. Like I'm reading this book currently. It's about perfectionism. And I think a lot of us feel like we have to be all in. Everything has to be perfect. And for order for us to be, on the ball to get the results that we want. And sure, there's some research, I'm sure, out there too, in just like thought process around like being consistent is not being perfect. But I actually looked up the definition of perfect the other day, and it just really, in Greek, it means complete. So like if you can complete your day in a way that feels good to you, that's perfect. And I think that is mind-blowing to me, because I was like, oh, so I've been searching for this thing, but technically, as long as I check these 3 boxes per day, I'm actually perfect in my own way because I'm completed and done the things that I wanted. Your mind's blown just like mine was when
You
I
just
read
blew
that.
oh my God.
Um, and I think that that's a big thing. Like that was another light bulb moment. And that just happened in this last like 2-week window when I picked up this book that's been sitting on my nightstand, you know? And just really knowing that you are only as perfect as you want to be, or you're only as complete as you allow yourself to be at the end of every day when your head hits that pillow. Tomorrow is not promised. And that is, when I think about that, it's actually a little scary because I have a lot of things to live for. You know, Tim has a daughter, my stepdaughter. She's got 3 little ones I love and cherish to spend time with. My son currently is deployed in Japan for the Navy. You know, like our lives are just like as real adults with like less responsibilities starting, and our kids are just starting their lives. And I want to be here for all of that. And so, like, my perspective of why I'm getting healthy now and why I want to stay well is totally different than when I started this whole journey at 30, at 21, at 14, when I was forced into finding myself. Like, it's just so crazy to think back and like, how many loops can I close? And each one has a significant part of the past in it that needed to kind of come to that closure too. And I really say wellness because I really believe that that's the key. Like my financial wellness, my mental wellness, my physical, like all those things are combined into our health as a whole. And I don't want to be reactive towards my health. I want to be proactive. And that's where I think my life is really going. And joining TTP is been an amazing piece of that for me so far. And I know it's only been 6 weeks, so I can't even imagine what the next like 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, all of it. Like, I am just excited to be a part of a team instead of trying to do this all on my own. And you've been a big part of that too, Jonah, just like welcoming me in, listening to me, allowing me time to kind of bring one chapter to a close to open up this next one. And I have big hopes and dreams to continue to learn more so I can be a better coach, be a better practitioner to help people instead of in an illness. Like, instead of attacking illness, I want to attack their wellness and from the root of the problems that they're facing, whether that's trauma, whether that is like medically necessary, understanding at a core level of how things need to change. So
That is one of the coolest parts about our job is that when we help someone take care of themselves, they see how it impacts every other aspect of their life. Their health, their wellness helps them create other boundaries and awareness around the other aspects of their life, their finances, their relationships, their family. There's so many other benefits that people gain when they learn to understand and take care of themselves the way that they need to, and they give themselves the time to learn and let those pieces click. It's very easy to get in our head and compare ourselves, to think perfection is the goal. But it sounds like to me, and this is why you blew my friggin' mind. Uh, we all have the definition of perfection wrong, um, and it's just absolutely it's so like that. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna throw it at all my clients who think perfection is the goal, and I'm gonna help them understand that they're actually chasing something that's not real. But anyway, I'm super happy to be able to have this conversation with you, Jen, and to hear your story. And I know everyone listening can relate in multiple ways. But ultimately, I want us to have these kind of conversations so people can hear. Like, I'm going to say this again. I probably said it like 1,000 times. It's okay for it to not make sense, for it not to go your way, because we all go through it in some way, shape, or form. We're not all coaches are these 90s douchebags that talk about protein and like expect you to do like a bunch of stuff that just doesn't fit your life. Don't get me wrong, there are still coaches that way, but my big goal is to change the nutrition and fitness space through realistic means, and just that being a real person and sharing real stories like yours. And I think it's only it's going to continue to be amazing to be in your corner throughout this process and see all the more people you get to help. And this is why I love doing these types of podcasts, because we get clients that listen to these, and it helps them hear themselves and us, and also know that we're also regular people who still have struggles that we want to work through as well. So this has been an awesome conversation, and based off everything that we talked about, Jen, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Everything we talked about, what's one thing you want the people listening, the person listening to this, to take away right now? What's the one thing that you want to leave them with for this episode?
Stop trying and just do it. No matter what, even the smallest action can be a catalyst to bigger actions. Just do. Stop trying, just do.
It's one of my favorite quotes from Yoda in Star Wars. Do or do not. There is no try.
Yes.
And it's such a powerful, like, it's such a powerful realization that whatever you do, you're still going on. As long as you're doing something in the right direction, as long as you're being generally right and going in the right direction, you're making progress. If you're just hoping and trying willy-nilly, well, it's not going to make it, it's not going to get you any closer. Like, it may for a short time. I'm trying to be perfect. I'm trying this diet. I'm trying these things. You may see temporary results, but if you actually shift it up and just say, I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to do what it takes for me. And that doesn't mean force ourselves to starve. It's like, no, I'm going to do the smallest thing that's manageable for my crazy ass life going on. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I'm a Star Wars geek, so the fact that you brought that up is awesome. My son's actually named after like George Lucas, Lucasfilms, Luke Skywalker. So that's actually kind of funny that you said that. It brings everything like full circle for me.
Yes.
Like you also know Star Wars. So.
Oh man, I'm a big nerd. And I'm sure we could talk a lot about all of the Star Wars, but that is not this podcast.
Okay.
But I appreciate you being here. And I think it's time for us to end this episode. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I hope you found it valuable. And if this helps shift your perspective, if this helped enlighten something for you, and if you think someone would benefit hearing this episode, please do us a favor and share it with at least one person. Or come find us in the Transformation Project Facebook group. The links are down below. If you want to see more of Jen and her stuff, those will be linked down below as well. And Jen, before I let you go, just so that everyone has the audio version, where can people find you the easiest?
Yeah, so Facebook is probably my number one place. Inside my stories, I'm Jennifer Rogers. You can add me as a friend or follow me there. Otherwise, on Instagram, I'm beautiful Jennifer Marie. And I also am in my stories there, and I'll probably get back into posting a little bit more as time frees up throughout this next couple of months. So excited. Thank you for having me, Jonah.
Yes, thank you for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.